Good evening, and welcome to WANA Live, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dressick. This is your other host,
Christina Fasonic. You got it right this time. I'm over here. So, how are you, Damien?
Well, it's good to be back on WANA Live. We've taken a little bit of a break due to uh, being,
All the things.
yeah, all of them, each and every one.
All the things.
Uh,
I don't
so
think we're alone, right, in that. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, we're in the depths of winter. I said I'm slowly thawing, but it's only because I just came in from outside.
Yes, yes, it's rather cold, and the forecast here for the weekend looks miserable. Saturday through Sunday here in the Wheeling part of Northern Appalachia, we are supposed to have wind chills, negative 20 degrees. I'm not into that.
Hmm.
Yes.
Well, nothing to be done about that, but what we can do is heat up your evening with a poet who is going to be reading on our show.
Yeah, why don't you tell our audience who that might be?
All right, so we have a a poet that you guys have seen, you may have seen here before, but if you want to go through the archives, he has read for us before.
Mhm.
Bob Walicki is reading tonight, one of the staples of the Pittsburgh poetry scene. His aesthetic speaks to the rich tradition of working class poetry. This is developed through his years and experience working in construction fields and as a plumber in the city of Pittsburgh. He's a two-time Pushcart and Best of the Net nominee. His previous poetry collections are Black Angels from Six Gallery Press and Fountain from Main Street Rag Press. And his latest book is called Watershed, and it was just released from Broadstone Books. So let's bring out Bob Walicki.
Hey, Damien, Christy.
Hey, how
Thanks
are
for having
you?
me. Good. Thanks for having me.
So, what are
Thanks
you
for
going
making
to
time to
read?
be on.
Oh, sorry, Damon. What are you going to read tonight?
Well, I want to start with a new poem that is that I finished actually after the book was published, and that always seems to happen. You write a poem, and you're like, I wish I could have put this poem in the book. But and I did want to read this poem because this poem has some heat in it, and we're all freezing, and we're tired of talking about how cold we are. So I like to read this poem and maybe bring some heat to the conversation.
All right.
All right, we're going to disappear and we'll come back.
All right. This poem is called Outside Wheeling Pittsburgh Steel, and it's an ekphrastic poem. And for those of you who don't know what ekphrastic means, it's a poem written from art. And it was a painting of a steel mill in Wheeling for this exhibit. And a lot of us had decided what painting we wanted to write from. And we had a big poetry reading from that exhibit. And I chose this work of art, which you obviously can't see, but hopefully it comes to life in this poem. Outside Wheeling Pittsburgh Steel. The midnight sun burns nuclear in a place where the steel is so hot you can breathe it in. PL&E carrying ore and coal for the hungry mouths of furnaces and the dirt-choked lungs of the men of Warwood County. The skin of their hands blistering in the purple heat. Grinders sparking into prisms, meteor showers of fracturing light. How many paychecks were spent at Karen's bar? The jukebox screaming out its rock and roll life and washing the troubles away from another shift, stamping steel or rolling sheets from molten hellfire. The blast furnace stretching its air all the way to Folensby, connecting the Northworks to bridges of fog, the walkways of oven gas, its skies and welded horizons, the sun Miller light yellow. Has anything burned as slow as desire or necessity? Your father, waking at 5 a.m. to drive 30 miles to sell furniture for 8 hours on his feet. Or your mother, 2 buses to answer phones, type someone else's words. Or your father, driving cabs. Or your father, climbing ceilings to fix leaks. How many ghosts spoke in the voices of our parents saying there are still good jobs out there. No words, though, from my father, teaching me how to burn, how to settle on a smoldering life, not its light, but the after fire, the scorch and the ash, the fuel, not the giving, but the everything a job takes. Years later, I learned how men bear it. The gun collecting, the deer stalking, the hunt down, lines thrown into a moving stream. I was 12 when I lit my first cigarette, breathing in the little fire I hadn't yet learned to keep down. Never thinking I was a part of something so ordinary, so common. I walked the broken asphalt of my hometown just east of Pittsburgh, the blocks of post-war starter homes, and stared over the sunless hills of a rust-stripped sunset. I never thought I'd move from, but I was there. I'm here. I wrote this down. For my next poem I'd like to read is from the book, and this is called The River. Dawn, and the trucks have come unannounced like relatives. Exhaust, smoke cutting open the dark like a cold one, blinding lights flashing. Workers have come to tear up our road, then fill it back up with their burning blackness. Smokes reclaim, leave everything gleaming. A laborer hovers in front of our driveway, shovels in what the machine misses, tar spitting at his hip, as the cooker's black pipe coughs hard, covering the sky with a memory I never wanted to know but watched as I stood bedside by my grandfather, listening to the river in his lungs. Who is alive now to remember his life? Winding hills, Pall Malls, a month's worth of Budweiser. The backs of mill houses cut slabs of cliffs, spilling into the Allegheny, taking everything into its tide, washing it away. So shifting gears for this last piece I would like to read to family, and sometimes whether you like it or not, a poem tells you what it needs to be written about, even if you intend to write about something else, and the poem says, no, this poem needs to be about something different. And I started to write this poem about television, and it became a poem about my mother. My mother's TV arrives like a star that's been here before us, blazing a path and blasting its volume down the long hallway to her apartment. Its glow of shows from cuisine to guns, detectives and delectables. Tuesday afternoon, there's a car crash on the third floor, gunfights and drug busts on the dock, while Jessica Fletcher writes chapters and cracks the case. Or is it the eggs from a cooking show? Its swirl of heat and sizzling pans turning out 5-minute chicken kebabs and broiled lobster. While YouTube offers her potholders cut from a house dress, a shot glass made out of cardstock. In another life, when she waited on buses, taking her work lunch in churches, when her fingers were steady enough to cut bangs, dye hair, twist strands into spirals, type 120 words a minute. Before she stopped counting time and the world passed through her in wiry realms of 1,000 channels of streaming light. I'm so small in this universe of flash and spectacle, a world that if I was inside, I'd be voted off the island, dancing with her under the stars instead of with them. But she'd rather sit this one out, next to the soccer player and the quarterback whose bell just got rung. And she's right there with them, in the penalty box, in the outfield's cloud of dust, in the bullpen chewing gum, waiting to be called up. No, the universe I want for her is all sunset and watercolor sky, an Arizona nightfall of wolf winds in ringtails, scanning moon-washed basins and cinnamon sands. The desert, BBC America says, is endless. Who's there to ask about Mother Earth with her plateaus and chasms, the great expanse of her back pain, with its shifting tectonic plates and spasms, the exile of her sand and the loss she's bared in the floodplains of her grief, where the only channel is the rain cutting a valley into a deeper body. Where are you now? At the precipice of 1,000 doorways, your remote a talisman, your calloused finger hovering over every possibility. Thank you.
Oh man, these are wonderful poems.
Thank you.
It's hard to know where to start because each one has a different resonance. I was struck by the idea that a poem tells you what it wants you to say, how you start thinking, like you said, you're going to talk about TV, but that's not really where it ended. And how once we get inside a poem, you're in a place, you're somewhere, that, and you don't know where you're going to be. And I just love that. I can tell that when you're in your poem, you're in there. And I think sometimes people forget that is the magic and the joy and the fear of writing, that we look forward to and hate at the same time. You know?
Well, like those are some of my favorite poems to write because
Yeah.
I love movement in poems. I love poems that go somewhere. And I love poems that are on a journey of self-discovery or, discovery within the world of the speaker, or the subject of the poem. And I always end up learning something more about myself and what I'm writing at the end of that journey than I was where I was at the beginning, which I love that.
Yeah, and I feel like the essay is known for this, right? Assaying, the essay is known as this exploratory thing. But I think, poetry does the same thing if you let it, which is what we were talking about before we went on the air, that if we allow the writing to do what the writing does, it'll take us to someplace better than if we say, this poem is here, it's here, it's here, and that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are other poems too that can be successful, that where you may not sit down and say, I'm going to write a poem about snow, or I'm going to write a poem about this bridge or whatever subject, and it's about that, but there's always a sort of this influx of this drive for me, this pull that you need to go deeper, or where's the heart of this poem. And that may be a pretty poem, that may be a lyrical poem, and maybe sometimes that's okay too, but I also want to dig deeper. I always feel that
Yeah.
directive.
And it shows. These poems were fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad we had you on to kind of kick off the winter season. I so much enjoyed the work you were sharing with us. I got to admit, you know, I don't. They say that was it great poets steal, and I don't think I'm a great poet, but I got to admit, I think I'm going to steal from you, Bob.
Mhm.
The idea of my mother's TV, that was such a captivating way to a prism through which to see someone, how they're experiencing, what might be on their television and how they're experiencing what is on it.
Mhm.
I'm kind of interested in having students, right? Like, like something like a TV, like the TV poems, like thinking about a person and what's on, maybe even their phone or something like that.
Well, it's funny that you say that, like about stealing, and I didn't steal from this poem or poet, but more inspiration. I'm sure have heard the incredible poem Refrigerator by Thomas Lux, I think 1957 but I love that concept of taking an object like a refrigerator that is just so banal and just straightforward, and it is what it is, but then it's opened and it's like it reveals so much life about what's in that refrigerator. And the same with this television, but it was real life. And I was going to visit my mother. I'll tell you the story of where this poem started. And she lives on the 3rd floor of this apartment building. And, she's losing her hearing. And she's all the way at the end of the hallway. And this hallway's maybe, I don't know, 200-300 feet long. It's a pretty long hallway. And the doors of the elevator opened up and I could hear her television. And I was walking, it got louder, and I just knew it was her TV. And I walked in and she's screaming over the television to greet me. And I'm saying, Mom, the television's on 84. Can you turn it down? So,
my dad's TV was always like that. You could hear it in the driveway. And I'm like, Dad, hello.
Right. But it's it's an amazing invention, obviously, but it's also when you see someone's world and they're limited with their mobility and how the world can become that, it's sad, but also, like you said, Damien, the prism through which I could know her.
Well, I love the line when you say the world passed through her.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something wonderfully elegiac in these poems that we've heard tonight. Like, you ask at one point, who is alive now? And another point, you say, I wrote this down. As you're sort of this chronicler of this post-industrial northern app. I really, really appreciated that. Christine and I are both seeing a couple episodes of this television program called The Gilded Age. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I find it very offensive in a lot of ways because it's so it doesn't give any voice to the people whose hard work is existing the rest of the characters to live. So I was thinking about the idea, who are these people with a river in their lungs? Who are these people that are driving these taxis and breathing steel and seeing the Miller Lite yellow sky? I really like the work you're doing, Bob. Great, good on you, man. Good stuff.
Thanks. I recently visited the Westmoreland Museum of Art, which is in Greensburg, and they had an immersive. It was called Winter. It was an immersive exhibit, and it took several of the paintings in this exhibit, and you were surrounded by these paintings that were maybe 15, 20 feet high. And some of these in some of these scenes, you could see these mill houses and these smoky skies, and it just really came to life, and seeing through the lens of an artist that thought that this was worth making into a work of art. Mm-hmm. And it's something I always struggled with when I started writing about work, because you have on this surface this you're taught that beauty is a certain thing. And, when you're writing something and you wanted to write something beautiful and lyrical, it has to be about this. But then when you see this gritty real life, you're like, how can I turn that into art? But then when you're surrounded with it, when you're surrounded with the reality of it, and I just started to embrace what that was about. And the poems just started flowing,
Well, I was struck by, I'm teaching a Rust Belt literature class this semester and focusing specifically on Northern Appalachian, because we could never get through all of Rust Belt lit in one semester, right?
Right.
And I told my students, during my lifetime, steel was king and now it's gone. And it's history now. I mean, obviously they're still making steel, a little bit of steel in places. But Wheeling Pittsburgh steel doesn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it loomed over my childhood, like in your poem, the heat of the mill, the fire of the mill, the people who were making the steel. And to think that it's history now it's taken me a while to get used to that.
Yeah. And, I never worked in a mill, but I knew people that worked in the mill, and I saw what it did to their bodies, and I saw the progression of what that did to a person mentally, physically. And, you know, when you witness it, you look at it differently, and it takes on a different type of meaning for you. And, you know, in a lot of these poems in this collection, at least the first part of this collection, the social consciousness of working that life kind of comes through a lot in terms of, you know, you know, as you read in my biography, you know, worked a lot of construction jobs, and, you know, you're pushed often to get through something. And a lot of times safety materials aren't provided for you, and you're using a grinder, using this heavy equipment. You don't have goggles, you don't have a breathing mask, and you're young, and you're like, I'll be fine. You know what I mean? We'll just get this done. Let's get it done. Let's knock it out. And, you know, I fell off ladders. I had accidents. I had metal in my eye from using you know, tools. So it's like, it's that one instant where you think that nothing's going to happen to you is when it happens to you. So that kind of realization and mindset that, you know, we aren't infallible, that we're very mortal and we do get hurt. And the stories of these people's lives, a lot of them aren't told. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. I wanted to honor these people that have spent their whole lives, and a lot of them shortened because of the work that they do.
Yeah, I think about, you know, there was that show on PBS called something like The Men Who Built America.
Mm-hmm.
And not one of them was the steel worker. They were all magnates, steel magnates, Carnegie and Frick and those.
Yeah, that's insulting.
Yeah, absolutely. I read a poem to my students today that Andrew Carnegie wrote, and it was about steel and the making of steel. He never once ever in that poem mentioned the worker. He said that's all there was to steel making, and it was the money, how much coal cost, and all this other shit. And I'm like, and the workers, and
Right.
the workers, you know, and he never mentioned that. And my students and I talked about this contrast that steel wouldn't exist if there wasn't a person making it. It's not all automated.
One of the smartest, and I may have told this story, but one of the smartest builders I've ever met, never graduated, never finished grade school. And yet this man could read a blueprint and could lay out complicated, you know, measurements, and would do math in his head, and could figure out where every pipe was. And I remember him taking a can of spray paint. He would spray dots on the dirt. And he said, just bring your pipe up in the center of that, and that's going to be where the wall is going to be. And I'm talking like a hill of dirt. Like how can you lay out where a building's walls and the center lines of, you know, of where the structure is going to be with a couple stakes in the ground and hills of dirt, and every pipe was in the wall. It was unbelievable. I'm thinking, this guy would ask me to fill out paperwork because he couldn't write, but he was laying out targets, you know.
He's a genius, and we need people like
Of
him.
Engineering, right.
See the world. I can't see that. I don't see the world that way. I can't.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a blueprint here, I would be like, I'd hang it on the wall and call it art because I couldn't read it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You do have some comments here. Paris says here. Just letting you know. And then Megan says amazing.
Thank you, Megan.
Yeah. So, and we had a lot of people watching tonight, and I know they appreciated your reading as much as I did.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you for making time to come on, Bob. We really appreciate you sharing work with us. And where can people pick up a copy of your new book from Broadstone Books?
Well, for right now, they can pick it up at broadstonebooks.com. I have an author page there. And if there's a way to share links for that, I'm happy to do that here or on WANA's Facebook
I
page.
I can put it in the chat.
Okay. If you'll give me a minute,
I think might be able to find it myself. I'm looking. That's the art gallery. Nope, you'll have to send me a link.
Okay.
I can't tell you how much I really enjoyed this. I feel like, you know, obviously we're no longer in the pandemic, but it feels a little claustrophobic at the moment.
It was more fun than a gunfight or a drug bust.
It's true. It's true. Well said.
Well, it's okay. Do I post that in the chat?
Sure, you can do that, and
Okay.
people will see it. It'll show up.
Okay. It's weird that you mentioned pandemic, because there is a section of pandemic poems and that are obviously older, but they were written during the pandemic, because the job that I'm in now, I'm working at a hospital. I'm not going to mention the hospital's name, but as a plumber, but I got the job like 2 months before COVID was a thing. And it was, you could have just driven over us with a tractor trailer, which is, we didn't know what we were facing. And to be front lines with that was just really terrifying. And I was vaccinated before it was even mentioned on the news, because we as frontline workers were all given the vaccine, and before it was even announced, and we didn't know what was gonna happen, how we were gonna feel. The doctors didn't even know what they were dealing with, and that was I think the most terrifying thing for me was seeing the nurses and the doctors, just, they didn't know what they were dealing with. And I'm thinking, well, if you guys don't know how to deal with this, where does that leave us, But we got through it, and the heroism and the courage, the courage that I saw in the face of so much pain and death, I'll never forget. And those people's their efforts of the medical staff was just, well, it was something that's emblazoned on me that I will take to my grave. Just seeing the sacrifices, and just people that were born to be doctors and born to be nurses, that were putting themselves at risk day after day to save people's lives. And it's just, you see that come out, and why this is like, you look at someone like that and you think to yourself, this is why this person became a nurse, a doctor, and it was that was uplifting for me to see that. And that helped a lot. That helped a lot of our, getting through that emotionally, just seeing that on a daily basis. But
Oh, no doubt. And I'm glad that you had an opportunity to do some writing about that.
yeah, it was, how can you not, it's something that you're faced with, and it's something that you've never faced before. And just the mortality of it. And what do? You have to go to work. There's a poem in there where I'm walking around and I touch the button to the elevator, and I'm thinking, okay, where's the next place I can wash my hands? And did I touch that doorknob, or did I not touch that doorknob? Was that before or after I put gloves on? I mean, living with that on a daily basis was just so exhausting.
Well, knowing that, the consequences of forgetting something that is a habit that we don't think about under other circumstances could have killed you or someone else.
Yeah, absolutely. We had just briefly, I'll tell you, just a visual of dealing with this on a daily basis. If we had to go into a room, to a patient's room that had COVID, we had a full-on hazmat suit that we had to wear, and it had a window like about this big to see out of. And then we had an air machine that was like a 10-pound backpack air machine that we had to sling on our backs with like a shop vac hose that plugged into the back of our neck that gave us air. And this took about like 15 minutes to put together and put on, to go in there and do what we had to do. And it was just terrifying, to be honest with you.
A time I know that we all hope we'll
never come back to, right? Yeah. But we got through it.
To end on a happy note.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a comment here from John Lawson, and he says he just got here. He's going to have to watch later. But he says, but I wanted to shout out to all three of you, Bob, Christina, and my old pal, Damien. So it's nice.
Good to hear you're watching, John. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, it's been a minute, John. Wow.
Yeah. And also, Christopher chimes in and he says, great job, Bob. So there's definitely people watching it, and I know that they really enjoyed your reading. Thank you so much for being on.
Absolutely. And thank you for taking the time and talking to me. I could do this for hours. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
All right. Have a good night, y'all.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks,
See
Jamie.
everybody. Stay warm.
Thanks, everyone.